Hi guys, it's Rob from Roll Balls. Okay, we're going to enlist the help of Mr. DNA again and delve into some project genetics and actually plan what we're going to do with this Desert Ghost project. So let's get a look at the two visual desert ghosts that I have for these recessive projects. I am working with a double recessive project, which is Desert Ghost into Clown, and we will delve at some stage into the genetics of working with those, but for the moment the single het for Desert Ghost clutch is good enough to illustrate how to plan a recessive project. So this is the male in the project, you're all familiar with him. This is the Leopard Lemon Blast Desert Ghost boy that we've already been using to produce a number of clutches this season. Your males will be mature first. So this is the boy that we've been using, and I also have a visual Desert Ghost female. This is Yellow Belly Desert Ghost. So this is the foundation for the project, and we talked about why it was necessary to create hets. Why do we actually need to create hets in our recessive project? Well, obviously the easiest way to breed desert ghosts is to breed a visual to a visual, and if we do that, this is Leopard Lemon Blast to Yellow Belly. All the offspring will be visual desert ghosts, but they'll all be leopard, pinstripe, pastel or yellow belly, and as long as I breed these two snakes together and don't breed them to anything else, that's all I will ever get in my combination. So it's very, very limiting. And at some stage, if I want to add other genes, just as you do with any other pairings, you inevitably have to breed your snakes to a snake that contains the combination of genes that you want. Unlike co-dominant or incomplete dominant projects, unfortunately for us, when we're working recessive projects, it's a two-step process, because when we breed a visual desert ghost to a non-desert ghost, all the babies will be hets. They will not be visual desert ghosts, but they will contain all the new genes that we need. We then have to breed those back to our Desert Ghost project in order to get those new genes into a visual desert ghost. So a two-step process, much longer than for a normal project using codominant genes. And that's the reason we produce hets. That's the reason why recessive projects are more expensive, because they actually take much longer and they're harder to plan. These are the two snakes that are the core foundation for my project. We have a male Leopard Lemon Blast Desert Ghost, and we have a female Yellow Belly Desert Ghost. Okay, so now we know why we needed to make the hets with our Desert Ghost male. Let's go ahead and start adding on all those other genes and figure out how we calculate probabilities for those multi-gene combos. So here we go. Here's Dad. Dad is a visual desert ghost and Mum is not. So Dad carries two copies of the gene at the address for the gene for Desert Ghost. Dad is also a leopard. He carries one copy of the leopard gene at a different address, the address for leopard on the genetic code. Dad is also pastel. He carries one copy of the pastel gene. Let's stick it on the other side to balance it up. He carries one copy of the pastel gene at the address that the pastel gene resides at, and this is a different address to the leopard and a different address to the Desert Ghost. Dad is also pinstripe. He's a Leopard Lemon Blast Desert Ghost. So here he's carrying one copy of the pinstripe gene, again at a completely different address, the address for pinstripe on the genetic code. And Mum is spot nose. She carries one copy of the spot nose gene at the genetic address that spot nose resides at. So these are the two animals that we're going to pair together. And I know exactly what you're thinking now. You're thinking, oh no, this is where things get too complicated and I get lost. This is where the Punnett square occupies a whole sheet of paper and starts to look like a spreadsheet with multiple permutations, and I have absolutely no way of following that. Every time I try, I get lost. Well, I'm exactly the same. Every time I try to use that method, I also get lost. So let's bring back Mr. DNA. Let's enlist the help of Mr. DNA. Let's go back to our Punnett's square. And because we've already established the principle that there are only two halves to mum and only two halves to dad's genetic material, there are only four possible outcomes. So my Punnett square is going to stay four possible outcomes. I'm not going to use anything more complicated than that. This is going to be just as easy as the stuff we've just done. Why is that? Well, it's because all of these genes act completely independently. Just because Dad is a desert ghost does not increase or decrease the chances of him passing on the leopard gene. Just because he passes on the leopard gene does not increase or decrease the chances of him passing on pastel. It does not increase or decrease the chances of him passing on pinstripe. All of these possible combinations work completely independently, and each of these genes has a 50-50 chance of being passed to the offspring. Let me show you how that works. So what we are going to do is to use this Punnett square with four possible outcomes, and we're just going to use it for each individual gene separately. We've already done desert ghost in part 1, so Dad's a visual desert ghost, Mum is not a desert ghost, but let's just recap. So if we take this half of the male's genetic material, we compare it to this half of the female that does not carry desert ghost, so that's one copy, or to this half of the female that does not carry desert ghost. She is not a desert ghost, so she's not carrying the gene at all, so we get one copy with that possible outcome. We take the other half of the male, one copy, one copy. So for desert ghost, all of the offspring, we've already determined this, all of the offspring are going to be het for desert ghost. They're all going to carry one copy of desert ghost. So we are going to keep score. So for desert ghost, one copy in each of those squares. Dad is pastel and Mum is not. He is carrying one copy of the pastel gene, and the pastel gene works completely independently to all of the other genes, so we can treat it separately. So here is one copy of pastel in Dad, no copies of pastel in Mum. What's the potential outcomes for that? Well, we split the genetic material in half, just the same as we've done before, and there are only four possible outcomes. So we take the half of Dad that is carrying the pastel gene, pair it to this half of the female and get one copy, or to this half of the female and get one copy, or we take this half of the male's genetic code that is not carrying the pastel gene and we pair it to this half of the female, no copies, this half of the female, no copies. So in the case of pastel, in the male, one copy of the pastel gene has a 50-50 chance of showing up in the offspring. 2 out of the 4 babies are going to be pastel. Let's take that outcome and put that onto our score sheet. So this is pastel, this is the outcome for Desert Ghost, this is the outcome for pastel. Now Dad is also leopard, lemon blast, so pastel, leopard, pinstripe. So he's carrying one copy of the leopard gene. So here's Dad again, and here is the leopard gene, and we're going to treat leopard completely separately to all the other genes. Just because leopard is passed on or not passed on does not affect the outcome of the other genes. It remains exactly the same. And you'll notice this time I've put the leopard gene on the other half of the male's genetic material, because actually it doesn't make a difference. It also does not make a difference to the outcome if the female is carrying the leopard gene and the male is not. There is still one copy of leopard split between the 4 halves of genetic material. So we'll make it Dad because it was Dad that was carrying the gene. We'll do this again. The half of the male that's not carrying leopard to the female, and either half is not carrying the leopard gene. So we get no copies, no copies. We take the half of the male that is carrying the leopard gene, pair it to this half of the female, 1 copy, or this half of the female, 1 copy, and you will see that there is a 50-50 chance of leopard being passed on to the offspring. That's exactly the same outcome for pastel, 50-50. So let's put that onto our score sheet. So this is leopard, 50-50. Let me just zoom out a little bit because it's a big piece of paper so we can keep score. So we have the outcome for Desert Ghost, we have the outcome for pastel, we have the outcome for leopard. We take our very simple 4 outcome Punnett square, and this time we're going to work pinstripe. Dad is also pinstripe. He's carrying 1 copy of the pinstripe gene. The pinstripe gene works completely independently to all the other genes. Pinstripe will be passed on just the same as pastel, just the same as leopard, 50% of the time. Dad is carrying the gene on one side of his genetic code but not on the other. So here we've got 1 copy, 1 copy, 1 copy, 1 copy, and this half of Dad's genetic code, no copies, no copies, no copies, no copies. Exactly the same outcome, 50-50. 50% of the offspring will carry the pinstripe gene, 50% will not. Let's put that onto our score sheet. So here we have Desert Ghost, the outcome for Desert Ghost in this pairing. Here we have pastel, the outcome for pastel in this pairing. Leopard, pinstripe. Let's add spot nose. Okay, so here we have our 4 outcome Punnett square, and I think by now you're starting to realise that actually this isn't complicated at all. Here is spot nose. Mum is carrying 1 copy of spot nose, and I think you can see from the potential combinations that it actually doesn't matter. Mum or Dad does not matter. 1 copy of spot nose will be passed on 50% of the time, just like all the other genes that are in the mix. So let's do that. Dad, this side of Dad, no copies, to this side of Mum, 1 copy of the spot nose gene, to this side of Mum, which is not carrying the spot nose gene, and that's no copies. We take this side of Dad, no copies, and pair to this side of Mum, which is 1 copy. Or to this side of Mum, no copies. So again, this is exactly the same outcome. There are only 4 possible outcomes, and spot nose is going to be passed on to 50% of the offspring. Let's put that onto our combined score sheet. So here we have Desert Ghost, here we have pastel, here we have leopard, here we have pinstripe, and here we have spot nose. The genetics part is actually very, very simple. This part of the exercise is actually probability. It has nothing to do with genetics. All we've done is taken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 genes, worked out the 4 options for each of those 5 genes, and now we're going to work out the probability of any given outcome. Desert ghost, het for desert ghost, there is a single copy in each square. That outcome is a given. All the babies will carry 1 copy. So the probability of the babies being het for desert ghost is 1. What are the probabilities of the babies being het for desert ghost and pastel? Het for desert ghost is 1. Pastel is 50-50, or 1 in 2. So 1 times a half is a half. There is a 50% probability that the offspring will be het for desert ghost and pastel. But there are other genes in the mix as well. Leopard, there's a 50% possibility that the babies will be carrying the leopard gene, and the same for pinstripe and the same for spot nose. So you can see what the possible combinations are using this. The top tier animal that we could get is het for desert ghost, pastel, leopard, pinstripe, spot nose. All the genes combined. What we were actually trying to get with this pairing was a leopard spot nose or a pastel leopard spot nose het for desert ghost. What is the probability of getting that particular morph in this pairing? Well, desert ghost is a given, so that's 1 times a half. We want pastel, so that's 50%. That's now a 50% probability. We want leopard. There is a 50% probability that the babies will be carrying leopard, so this is 1 times a half is now a quarter. We do not want pinstripe. There is a 50% chance that the babies will have pinstripe, 50% chance that they won't. So if we don't want pinstripe, we still have to include a 50% probability that the babies might carry pinstripe, and that's an outcome we don't want. So pastel, leopard, no pinstripe. So het for desert ghost, pastel, leopard, no pinstripe is going to be probability of 1 times a half times a half times a half. Spot nose. We want spot nose, but we don't want pinstripe. We want leopard, we want pastel. Het for desert ghost is a given. What is the probability of getting a pastel, leopard, spot nose? Het for desert ghost. Het for desert ghost probability is 1. That's a given. Pastel, 50-50. Leopard, 50%. So we have probability of 1, half, quarter, 1/8. We do not want pinstripe. 1/16. We have it again for spot nose. So this outcome is a given. Each of the additional genes that we add halves the probability of getting the combination that we want. I have a cheat sheet here which shows each additional gene that we add halves the probability. So we go from a half to a quarter to an 1/8 to a 1/16 to a 32nd to a 64th. All the potential outcomes from this combination have exactly the same probability of occurrence, and if you go on Morph Market and use their genetic wizard, you will see that that holds true. In fact, please do go on Morph Market and check to make sure that this is correct, because this is so simple, so easy to work out. Why would we even bother with Morph Market and a genetic calculator? We can do this in our heads. This isn't genetics, this is just probability. Easy! There was a 1 in 16 chance of us getting a pastel leopard spot nose. There was a 1 in 16 chance of us getting a leopard spot nose. What we actually got with spot nose in it was a pastel spot nose. There is a 1 in 16 chance of getting a pastel spot nose. Remember, the het for Desert Ghost outcome is a given, so we halve it, halve it, halve it, halve it. A half, a quarter, an eighth, a 16th. We didn't get any normals, but het for Desert Ghost, no pastel, no leopard, no pinstripe, no spot nose is also a half, a quarter, an eighth, a 16th. Exactly the same probability of getting a normal as there was a probability of getting a leopard lemon blast spot nose. The top tier animal and the bottom tier animal have exactly the same probability of occurrence. So this, which is often presented as a Punnett square that is like a spreadsheet and a full page of writing on it, is actually still the same concept. There are only 4 potential outcomes for any given gene. So in this clutch here, the het Desert Ghost clutch, we got 3 females, and females are always going to be useful in your het projects. Females are the ones that lay the eggs. We have a straight leopard and 2 pastel leopards, and they are extremely feisty. This girl is striking at me every time I go near her. But these are going to stay in the project. We've got leopard and pastel leopard in het Desert Ghost form, and we can mix any combination with these and get some nice babies from these pairings. So these 3 girls will stay. What we pair them to, right now we have the leopard lemon blast Desert Ghost, but by the time these females are mature enough to give us a clutch of eggs, we may have any number of other options to put to these. So these 3 girls are definite holdbacks, and we got 4 males, and you've seen the combinations that we got in the clutch, and unfortunately for the most part all of those genes in the males are also in the father, who is a visual Desert Ghost. So why would we want to use those males? It was spot nose we're after, and one of the males, possibly 2 of the males, does contain spot nose, so we are going to use him, and because he's a male we'll be able to use him much quicker. So these females are going on the shelf. They're always useful in your projects, and we have 3, 2 pastel leopards and a leopard. What we pair them to, we have plenty of time yet to decide. So given what we got in clutch 2, this female, which is a visual Desert Ghost, she's a yellow belly Desert Ghost. The original intention was to pair her to the leopard lemon blast Desert Ghost male and produce a clutch of all visual Desert Ghosts, which would be pastel, leopard, pinstripe, yellow belly combinations. That was the whole intention of clutch 2, was to get spot nose into our Desert Ghost projects. This female is not quite 2 years old and not quite up to size. This guy here, who has just hatched, is a male, and by the time this female is ready to breed, this little male here might just be ready to breed with this female. He is pastel spot nose, het for Desert Ghost. What will be the outcome of this pairing? Well, instead of pairing Desert Ghost to Desert Ghost and getting all visual Desert Ghosts, we know that pairing a visual to a het, this is the visual and this is the het, only 50% of the babies will be visual Desert Ghosts. So this little guy here has spot nose, and there is a 50% chance that he is going to pass on the spot nose gene to his offspring. 50% times 50% is 25%, or a quarter. So we are looking at a statistical probability of 25% of the offspring from this potential pairing would be visual desert ghost with the spot nose gene. There is yellow belly and pastel also in the mix, not to be sneezed at in desert ghost combos. So because this is a male and he matures quicker, and because we have a visual female that's almost ready to go, and I prefer in this project to pair visuals to my hets rather than do het to het, I think this is the way to go in the project. This is going to have a very high probability of giving me a spot nose desert ghost visual from this clutch. There is a very strong possibility that we'll get more than one. Of course it will be in combination with the other genes, but I don't mind that at all. So I think for this project, at least for this little male here, this is the way forward. So this will be a visual to a het pairing. There will be pastel, yellow belly and spot nose in the mix. There is a 50-50 chance that the babies will be visual and a 50-50 chance that those visuals will carry the spot nose gene. So a 25% probability of achieving the desired outcome. Awesome. Okay, so why is this clutch only single het when it's quite clear that I'm trying to get the double recessive, the desert ghost clown, and spot nose would go towards a desert ghost Batman? Well, the reason that I've made these just single het for desert ghost is that I don't actually have a spot nose clown to make double hets with. That's the simple truth. Rather than let that stall the project, we went ahead and made the single het. We do have spot nose to work with now in desert ghost that we would need at some stage to breed that back into the clown and produce the hets again, or we could try and procure a very specific snake for this project. Snakes like that, double hets or a visual recessive with a het, don't come along every day, and they're usually not advertised on Morph Market. So what we'd be looking for is probably a spot nose desert ghost het for clown. Probably too expensive to buy the double visual. That would be the Persia ball python made by David Suarez in Indonesia. And where's the fun in that anyway? We want to make our own. So where would I get a visual desert ghost spot nose het for clown? I think I know. Okay guys, so there you go. That's using the simple techniques and pipe cleaners that we've looked at before, and we've worked out all the probabilities from the potential pairings that we could do, and you've seen that it's very straightforward. We can do it in our heads. It's based on the principle that we can look at all the genes independently. They all operate separately. If we're looking at supers, of course there's a copy of the gene on each side of the allele. So I have been asked a question about when genes do not operate independently, and there are quite a number of those. We're discovering more all the time. These are the allelic genes, where you get two separate genes, two different genes, but they have the same key to the address on the genetic code. So you end up with effectively a super form, but instead of it being two copies of the same gene, it's two copies of a different gene. And how does that work in our calculations? Well, it works in exactly the same way, and perhaps if we're up for it, we can do a video on ALS and how ALS works. Drop down in the comments below if you'd like to see me do another pipe cleaner video on acts like supers or allelic combinations. In the meantime, that's the project. We've got 4 holdback snakes. We have a plan for the male, which will be ready in the shortest time, and we will be getting spot nose into our visual desert ghosts in the next round of pairings in about 6 months to a year's time. So not actually that long in our project plan, which was the whole point of plotting out the project and seeing what was the quickest way of arriving at our objective. So hope you enjoyed that, guys. Don't forget to share, like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.